You know that feeling, right? Um, the one where your brain feels like a browser with like 50 tabs open.
Oh, yeah.
And each one is screaming for attention. Work deadlines, study goals, trying to carve out time for friends, or just, I don't know, doing the laundry.
It's that constant juggle.
It is. And there's often that one task, or maybe five, you should be tackling. But somehow, well, it just keeps getting pushed to tomorrow.
That is such a universal experience, that delay, whether it's, a big project or a small chore. That urge to postpone is something I think we all wrestle with to varying degrees.
Absolutely. And you sent us a fantastic stack of sources, diving deep into this intricate relationship between mastering your time and confronting that powerful pull of procrastination.
Yeah, so our goal in this deep dive is really to sift through these articles, research papers, notes, and just pull out the most valuable, maybe even surprising insights on understanding why we put things off and, crucially, how we can actually gain better control of our time.
Because, like, these sources make really clear this isn't just about, squeezing more tasks into your day. It's about reducing that background hum of stress.
Right, exactly. Feeling more capable, more in control.
Yeah, freeing up time for what you genuinely want to do and, ultimately moving closer to achieving the things that actually matter most to you.
So, where should we start? Unpacking procrastination itself.
Let's do it. Let's
Right.
really get into what procrastination is and what the sources are saying is actually going on when we fall into that habit.
Okay. So the sources generally define procrastination pretty clearly. It's basically the voluntary delay of an intended course of action, even when you expect negative consequences.
Right. It's that tendency to put off what you know you should be doing, even when you know it's probably not in your best interest.
And it shows up in so many ways, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, everyone knows the classic signs,
Hmm.
getting completely lost scrolling through social media when you have a deadline looming, or finding suddenly urgent reasons to, like, deep clean your entire house instead of starting that
Oh,
report.
right. The strategic distraction techniques. Or just constantly worrying about a task without ever actually starting it.
Oh, that's a killer too.
Yeah, and there's also that feeling of inadequacy or sometimes just sheer dread that comes from looking at an overwhelming to-do list and feeling kind of paralyzed by it.
And it feels like laziness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just not motivated enough. But the sources really push back on that idea. They suggest it's often much more complex than just, simple idleness.
That's a really key takeaway. The psychology behind it, as explored in these materials, it points to much deeper roots. Like, one significant factor is the pull of immediate gratification.
Oh, okay.
We're kind of wired to prioritize short-term pleasure or even just relief from discomfort over future rewards, even if those future rewards are, substantial and align with our long-term goals.
So the discomfort of starting a difficult task is right now, but the reward of finishing it feels far away.
Exactly. Whereas, checking social media gives you that little dopamine hit now. Delayed discomfort versus immediate, easy reward.
Makes sense.
What else? Well, another really powerful driver the sources talk about is the fear of failure, or its close cousin, perfectionism.
Right.
The anxiety around not doing a task perfectly or making mistakes or maybe facing criticism. It can be so intense that delaying the task becomes a way to avoid facing that potential negative outcome.
It's like that subconscious thought, if I don't start it, I can't fail at it. Or
Yeah.
maybe if it's not perfect, at least I can blame it on starting late.
Precisely. Delaying provides this temporary psychological escape hatch. The sources also connect procrastination to a lack of clarity or just feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, when a task just seems too big, too complex, or you're just not sure where to even begin.
It's so much easier to just not start.
Right. All right.
The anticipation of the task itself can trigger significant anxiety, and procrastination offers this brief but ultimately really costly reprieve.
And sometimes it just becomes like a default coping mechanism, doesn't it, for stress or boredom or feeling overloaded, even if, ironically, it adds more stress later on.
Exactly. Using unproductive activities to kind of numb or distract yourself from the discomfort of the necessary task. What's really fascinating, and a common thread in these sources, is how procrastination actually warps our perception of time.
The classic underestimation. Oh, that report, that'll only take an hour, when deep down you know it's probably 3 hours minimum.
Exactly. We create this false sense of having plenty of time, which makes delaying feel totally acceptable in the moment. And that leads to that frantic rush right before a deadline where, quality inevitably suffers and stress just skyrockets. The sources really highlight this distortion as a major enabler of the whole cycle.
Okay, so understanding why we procrastinate, the gratification, the fear, the overwhelm, the time warp, that's step one. But what's the actual cost? How does this habit really impact our ability to manage time effectively, and what are the ripple effects?
Well, the direct impact on time management is pretty clear. It's just a massive drain on productivity and efficiency.
Yeah.
Time that could be spent making steady, calm progress is just lost to avoidance and distraction. And this forces you to rush, which increases the likelihood of errors and definitely reduces the quality of your work.
And it feeds on itself, doesn't it? Like, the harder it is to start one task because you've delayed it, the harder it then becomes to find the motivation or energy for the next thing.
It absolutely creates this destructive domino effect. Delaying one thing creates a backlog, which makes everything else feel more overwhelming, which then encourages more delay.
Or
And beyond just productivity, the consequences, as noted pretty consistently in the sources, they spill into pretty much every area of life.
like the personal stress and guilt, that constant feeling like you're behind or maybe letting people down.
Absolutely. It can really strain relationships if you're seen as unreliable. And professionally, it can lead to missed deadlines, opportunities just passing you by.
Damage to your reputation, maybe.
For sure. And hindering career growth.
Yeah.
Then there's the mental health toll.
Yeah, that constant cloud of impending doom hanging over you when you know something needs doing.
It's significant. Overwhelm, guilt, self-doubt, negative self-talk, they become constant companions. The sources actually link chronic procrastination to increased anxiety and even depression because you're sort of trapped in this cycle of discomfort, avoidance, and then intense pressure.
So long term, it really limits your personal growth and success.
Yeah.
You end up always reacting, right?
Yeah.
Never proactively building towards something bigger.
Exactly. Relying on that last-minute panic might feel like it works sometimes, but it really stifles creativity and just keeps you in this perpetual state of stress.
Okay, so that's the sobering reality of procrastination. Which brings us to the flip side, the immense power and benefits of effective time management, as the sources outline.
Right. Time management is defined generally as the process of consciously planning and controlling how you spend your time on specific activities. The goal is to boost your effectiveness, efficiency, and productivity. It's really the art of juggling all those competing demands, but intentionally.
It sounds simple when you put it like that, but the impact is huge. Reducing stress is a major one, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just having a plan and seeing yourself follow it, even imperfectly, dials down that anxiety significantly.
And paradoxically, maybe better time management actually gives you more time.
It does. More time for hobbies, relaxation, the people and activities that actually energize you, rather than feeling like you're always catching up.
It's also highly valued professionally. The sources mentioned that the ability to prioritize and manage your workload is a key trait employers are always looking for.
Yeah, it directly enables you to achieve your goals faster and more effectively. It boosts your overall productivity and, importantly, your confidence. And it's essential for building a healthy, sustainable balance between, say, your work, your studies, and your personal life.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem procrastination and highlighted the immense value of the solution time management. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. The core strategies and tools these sources champion for actually doing this. How do we manage time effectively and break that procrastination habit?
Right, the practical stuff. So the foundation, according to pretty much all the sources, is awareness and planning. Step 1, understand why you personally procrastinate.
Okay.
Reflect honestly on your triggers, your habits, the specific psychological reasons we just talked about, fear, overwhelm, whatever it is for you. The sources suggest that simply gaining this self-awareness can begin to loosen procrastination's grip.
So like shining a light on the underlying fear or the perfectionism rather than just beating yourself up for being lazy.
Exactly. Understanding, not just judging. From there, it's about effective planning. The sources consistently recommend setting goals correctly. The SMART method comes up a lot.
Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely.
Exactly. Making sure your goals aren't just vague wishes. And thinking about breaking down your bigger ambitions into short, medium, and long-term steps.
And planning the actual work too, right? I saw one practical tip highlighted was writing your to-do list for the next day before you finish the current one.
Yeah, that's a great one. So you wake up knowing exactly where to start, eliminating that moment of morning friction, that what should I do now feeling,
That makes sense.
using calendars, scheduling tools for deadlines, larger projects. That's also crucial for just organizing yourself visually and getting it out of your head.
Okay, now, the heart of effective time management, which was mentioned in multiple sources, is prioritization. When everything feels important, how do you possibly decide what gets your attention first?
This is where the Eisenhower matrix, sometimes called the urgent important matrix, is frequently cited as an incredibly useful tool. It's based on President Eisenhower's insight that most things that are important aren't urgent, and most things that are urgent aren't important.
Okay, I think I've heard of this. It helps you categorize tasks based on those two factors, right?
Hmm.
Urgency and importance.
Exactly. So you get four quadrants. Quadrant one is important and urgent.
These are the crises, the pressing deadlines, things that demand immediate action, clear consequences if you don't act. Like a project deadline today, or an urgent client request, or maybe fixing a burst pipe at home.
Right. The do it now stuff. Then there's quadrant two, important but not urgent. This is the quadrant the sources really emphasize is key for proactive work and long-term success.
So this is things like planning a long-term project, professional networking, exercise, learning new skills, stuff that really contributes to your goals but doesn't scream for immediate attention.
Precisely. And the key here is you need to schedule time for these deliberately. Otherwise, they get crowded out by the urgent stuff. This is the schedule is quadrant.
Got it. Then quadrant 3.
Quadrant three is urgent, but not important, at least not important to you or your main goals. These are things that pop up demanding immediate attention, but don't actually move your own priorities forward.
Like maybe some emails, interruptions from colleagues asking for things they need, maybe some meetings that aren't critical for you to attend.
Exactly. The sources suggest trying to delegate these if possible, or at least minimize the time you spend on them. This is the delegate X quadrant.
Okay. And finally, quadrant 4.
Quadrant four is neither important nor urgent. These are the pure distractions, the time wasters.
The endless social media scrolling, checking news constantly, maybe work about work, like those status meetings that don't add real value.
Right. The sources are pretty blunt here. Delete these. Eliminate them as much as possible. This is the delete its quadrant.
So the matrix helps you visualize where your time is actually going versus where it should be going.
Yeah, the benefits are significant. Reduced stress because you're clearer on priorities, better focus on Q1 and Q2, boosted productivity, and it really encourages delegation and forces you to confront those time wasters in Q4.
The sources offered some practical tips for using it too, didn't they? Like maybe color coding tasks by quadrant?
Yeah, or limiting the number of tasks in each box so the matrix itself doesn't become overwhelming. One interesting suggestion was to try tackling some Q4 items first, like literally deleting distracting apps or unsubscribing from emails to get a quick win and feel a sense of control.
That's interesting.
It forces you to be honest about how you're spending your time, though the sources also acknowledge challenges. It can far to categorize tasks initially, right?
Sure. It's really important or just urgent?
Exactly.
Right.
And you can get stuck analyzing the matrix instead of actually doing the work. Or you might neglect Q2 because it never feels urgent.
Or find it hard to delegate or delete things.
Right. So flexibility is key. Unexpected Q1 things do happen and derail the plan sometimes.
Okay, so prioritization is huge. Moving beyond that, the sources discuss practical task management techniques. One fundamental idea seems to be breaking down large, daunting tasks.
Yes, task chunking. It makes the starting line feel much, much closer and less intimidating. Just focusing on the first small step, like write the outline instead of write the whole report, is much easier than thinking about the entire mountain.
Setting a specific time limit for a task can also help, right? To stay focused and prevent it from just expanding to fill all available time.
Definitely. It helps you stay efficient and also spots potential problems earlier if a small chunk takes way longer than expected.
And the sources seem pretty united on the idea that multitasking is, well, basically bad. I saw a stat about it taking nearly half an hour to regain focus after switching tasks.
Yeah, the cost of context switching is really high. So to combat this, they suggest techniques like task batching.
That's grouping similar tasks together, right? Like answering all your emails in one block or making all your calls together.
Exactly. Or tasks related to one specific project, do them in one focus session. And then there's time blocking.
Which is scheduling specific blocks of time for specific tasks in your calendar. Like 9:10 a.m., work on Project X report.
Right. Both batching and blocking help you dedicate focused energy and fight that urge to constantly switch between different things.
The Pomodoro technique also gets mentioned quite a bit in the sources.
Yeah, it's a popular one. Using timed intervals, classically 25 minutes of focused work followed by a short 5-minute break to maintain concentration and prevent burnout, then longer breaks after a few cycles.
Okay, so managing the tasks themselves. What about managing your environment and yourself, your energy?
Equally critical. A major theme is limiting distractions. First step is identifying your personal time sinks.
Digital ones are huge. Social media, notifications, emails popping up.
Definitely. But also people, family, housemates, noisy neighbors if you work from home, even chores calling your name.
So practical steps like turning off notifications, putting your phone in another room, communicating your focus times to housemates.
Having a dedicated workspace if possible. These seemingly small things can make a huge difference to your focus.
That physical separation helps mentally too, doesn't it? Separating work mode from home mode.
It really does. Some sources even suggest co-working spaces if home is just too distracting. And just being mindful of where you choose to work, avoid places where, you tend to get sidetracked.
And taking breaks. It's important not to confuse breaks with procrastination, right?
Absolutely crucial distinction. The sources emphasize that short, regular breaks, like 5 minutes every hour, maybe are essential for refreshing your mind, maintaining focus, boosting creativity, and preventing burnout. They aren't slacking off. They're part of working effectively.
Setting timers for breaks, maybe getting up and walking around, stepping away from the screen.
Yeah, these things recharge your mental battery. And related to environment is creating boundaries, both physical, like that separate workspace, and digital.
Like turning off work notifications after hours.
Exactly. Protecting your personal time is vital for preventing burnout and maintaining that life balance.
Okay, that covers the external factors. Now let's talk about the internal game. Mindset, accountability, self-discipline. The sources really seem to lean into the importance of challenging negative self-talk.
Yes, that internal critic can be a major driver of procrastination. So, consciously replacing those critical thoughts, I'm so bad at this, I'll never finish this has to be perfect, with more realistic and empowering ones.
Like focusing on progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Cultivating a proactive growth mindset that values learning and effort over just achieving a flawless outcome is key. The sources suggest focusing on the positive reasons for doing a task, what you'll learn, the satisfaction of achieving it, how it helps you reach a goal rather than being driven solely by fear, like fear of failure or looking stupid.
Maybe even writing down why you're doing something to reinforce that purpose when motivation dips.
That's a great tactic. And staying actively engaged, especially in studies or complex work, aiming to really understand the material, not just get through it, seeking out what's interesting, setting a purpose for each activity, asking questions.
What about commitment? When you're just stuck.
Yeah, if you're really stuck, the advice often boils down to commit to just one tiny step, the smallest possible action. Finish that small piece, and then this is important, reward yourself in some small way.
Build that self-trust, that feeling of I followed through.
Exactly. It builds momentum. And being realistic is vital too. Changing deep-seated habits like procrastination takes consistent effort and time. Avoid setting unrealistic expectations for overnight transformation.
And learning to say no, that came up too. Politely refusing additional tasks if you're already overloaded.
Definitely. Checking your existing priorities and capacity before automatically agreeing to something new is crucial for protecting your time and focus.
Taking ownership seems important too, accountability.
Yes, accepting more accountability for your work and time, setting those SMART goals we talked about, maybe sharing them with someone, communicating clearly about progress, especially if you're working remotely, keeping tabs on your own productivity, perhaps using some of the tools we'll mention, and just standing behind your work.
One source even suggested something quite simple, just starting your day earlier, getting up before the chaos hits.
It can provide that calm, clear-headed time for focused work, especially on Q2 tasks, before energy levels naturally dip later in the day.
Okay, and finally, leveraging technology. This is a recurring theme, isn't it? There's so many tools out there now.
There really are, and they can be incredibly helpful if used intentionally. Like time-tracking software, Rescue Time, My Hours, things like that.
They show you exactly where your digital time is going.
Right.
Could be pretty eye-opening.
Definitely. It can highlight exactly which Q4 activities, like random websites or apps, are eating up your day without you even realizing it. Really useful for identifying those time sinks and boosting accountability, especially for remote work.
And then there are the classic to-do list and note-taking apps. Microsoft To Do, remember the milk, Notion came up.
Yeah, tools to help you organize tasks, add details, set reminders, break things down, maybe even collaborate if needed. Much better than scattered sticky notes.
Productivity timers, too, like Brain Focus, that help you implement those Pomodoro-style work break intervals digitally.
Right, they take the guesswork out of timing your focus sessions and breaks.
And then more comprehensive tools for managing bigger things.
Yeah, Project management or task management platforms like Asana, Trello, Todoist, they offer more robust ways to manage tasks, assign priorities, track progress, communicate with teams, especially for larger projects. Even Zoom, while mainly for communication, got mentioned for enabling clear, scheduled interactions, which can reduce those random ad hoc interruptions that constantly derail focus.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of ground covered. So bringing all this back to you, the listener,
Yeah.
we've really done a deep dive here into what procrastination is, the sometimes surprising psychological forces driving its pretty significant impact, and then the really empowering benefits of effective time management.
Yeah, and we've pulled out this wealth of strategies directly from the sources, building that self-awareness, planning effectively with SMART goals, mastering prioritization using tools like the Eisenhower matrix.
Right, breaking down tasks, batching similar work, blocking out time in your calendar, using techniques like Pomodoro.
Managing your environment to limit distractions, taking those essential breaks, managing your energy, challenging negative mindsets, building accountability, and strategically using technology to support it all.
With all those demands on your plate, lectures, work projects, trying to have a social life, just basic personal tasks, it is so easy to feel overwhelmed. But these insights, they aren't just theory, are they? They offer practical, actionable pathways to actually take back some control over your time and your energy.
It's really not about becoming some kind of productivity robot. It's about making intentional choices, reducing that chronic stress, and aligning your daily actions with what truly matters to you, with your goals and priorities.
Right. So by understanding the why behind the delay, behind the procrastination, and then implementing conscious strategies like planning ahead, prioritizing wisely, seriously. Check out that Eisenhower matrix if you haven't, minimizing distractions, scheduling those crucial breaks, and using the tools available. You really can actively work to break free from that cycle of I'll do it later and feel significantly more capable and in control of your day.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. If, as so many of these sources suggest, procrastination is often a subconscious form of self-protection, maybe rooted in fear or discomfort, what possibilities might open up for you when you challenge that? When you choose to act not out of the panic of an approaching deadline or fear of judgment, but out of a clear sense of purposeful priority, deciding what truly matters and taking those intentional steps towards it, one small chunk at a time.
A powerful shift to consider. That's it for this deep dive.